Yes. Yes on both of those. I favor just cause eviction laws. Seattle recently passed an ordinance. It's called a just cause ordinance. I think there's 18 specific conditions, one of which must be met before an eviction can proceed. I think that's something we need to think about. I think we need to talk with our friends and colleagues in Olympia about lifting, perhaps to discuss rent stabilization, to figure out what's going on, what's driving our prices, causing near homelessness, coming up for a lot of people facing near homelessness right now over this issue. And the inclusionary zone, I support that. Yes.
Okay. I don't have any follow-up.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. I too favor just cause evictions, and I invite our community to come together to create that list for those reasonable causes. Similar to Seattle, but we have some of our own opportunities down here. I also favor the voluntary inclusionary zoning with the opportunity that we can discuss density bonuses if we have individual developers who want to consider permanent affordable housing for low and moderate income families, but also the developers who are using public funds or fee waivers or tax abatements have the opportunity to do that mixed income strategies that we expect. And also in the zones that we're looking at, especially for those areas where the city owns land and has developed a master plan, we have the opportunity to allow essential public sector employees such as police officers, teachers, firefighters to live in those developments controlled through the city through the master plan option.
So this came from one of the ideas from the Affordable Housing Task Force that you guys worked on. Why was something like the inclusionary zoning or things like that didn't take so long to implement and really didn't cost anything, it was minimal if anything, why would those not have been enacted first before the tax levy?
Well, recall that we were trying to work fast to start making some serious input into finding options for housing. The inclusionary zoning goes through a planning process, and we're also, part of that is looking at the accessory dwelling units. So we're looking at that entire bundle. Terry and I had the opportunity to have the first legal ADU in the city of Vancouver, and for the last 13 years have offered free housing to individuals in that ADU. That's all part of the package that is moving forward.
How do I get somebody into that unit?
I am hearing impaired. You probably recognize the hearing aids, so I would ask you please to repeat the question.
Okay. Sorry. It sounds very loud.
Hold the mic down here, and I couldn't hear everything you were saying.
Okay. To keep people in their homes and create affordable housing, do you favor banning no-cause evictions within the city limits and/or enacting an inclusionary zoning law?
Very good question.
Thank you.
Banning no-cause evictions. Doesn't this tie back to the Washington state law about evictions? Isn't this the statute? Would have a difficult time changing it, but I believe it has to be changed at that level. And that's not something the city's going to be able to do alone.
I know other cities have done it, like in Washington. Seattle's done it.
If we can do it, then absolutely, we don't want a no-cause. What we want to do is keep poverty, people that will be on the streets in their homes, we're going to be better taken care of. Particularly when you're talking about less disadvantaged people, the elderly, kids, etc., families with kids. The other part of your question?
Enacting an inclusionary zoning law.
The zoning laws, and we're referring to the affordable housing, I assume.
Yes.
Affordable housing is not affordable in Vancouver, nor will it ever be until we change the building codes. Building codes dictate what we can build a home for and how much. Change the building codes, we can build some pretty affordable housing.
So is that a yes or no on inclusionary zoning?
Well, the zoning is the easy part, changing building codes is the other part. There's a two-phase approach to this.
Okay, thank you.
So this sounds on the surface like a very simple question, but it's actually complex. I do support just cause notices to vacate, and whether it's no cause or just cause, it still isn't an eviction, so it doesn't go on a person's record, just to make sure everyone understands that. So yes, I do support just cause, asking individuals to be displaced from their home for no reason at all, that are on month-to-month leases just isn't fair. And the second piece with inclusionary zoning, we do have a form of inclusionary zoning when individuals receive tax abatements. What that means is that you're asking a developer to set aside a certain percentage of units in their development. Typically, it's anywhere from 10 to 20%. And I think inclusionary zoning would be an easy way to start integrating people of diverse incomes into development so you don't get rich parts of the city and poor parts of the city. But I do believe that there will be developers that are requiring and relying on private financing who do not receive public funds who will need an in lieu of option. So I would support that provision.
I have a follow-up. Okay, thank you.
It's your voice for a second.
You're the zero teacher. The inclusionary zoning, can you tell me what do you think that will do for the education for kids who are growing up in poverty?
So inclusionary zoning, so anytime you can have mixed incomes, especially with students who have opportunities to see the possibilities from people of higher incomes, it creates so much more opportunity. And so that in itself is going to help propel graduation rates. It's going to help increase, potential skill building and networking, being able to network with more affluent and connected people. But there are a ton of studies done on zip code, so you'll hear a lot about, your future should not be predicated or dependent on your zip code, and this inclusionary zoning model would take care of that.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm in support of the just cause and also the zoning, but we got to understand, is that going to keep people in their homes? Now, the cost of living is steadily on the rise, and people are working full-time generally. So now we have the dad and the mom, or both partners, they're both working full-time, and they're barely getting by when just, 50, 60 years ago, generally there was one person working and could provide for the whole household. So as people are working, the buying power of their money is steadily going down. So I think we need to think about that, and that's why I bring that. We can also issue our own currency here, that we could circulate it within our own community, and that would boost it. And that could be like a pilot program. Also, we need to focus on the discrimination for people trying to find housing. People with a criminal record, people with bad credit, it's very hard for them to find a home to begin with. So, also more jobs.
I do support enacting just cause ordinances to protect renters, as Seattle has done, and I also support inclusionary zoning to provide for more affordable housing options. Since nearly 1 in 4 renters pay over half their income towards rent, it's kind of something that we need to be giving them another option. And I think we can do both of those, and that can help out a lot.
What would you say to the landlords or the private owners who would likely give you some backlash on I guess on both of those actually, but mostly the no cause eviction one?
You absolutely need a reason to kick somebody out of their home and onto the street, because it's just not moral to throw someone out when...
landlords will tell you it's their home because they bought it. And I don't think there's one candidate here who is opposed to just cause. Raise your hand if you're opposed to a just cause eviction ordinance in Vancouver, Washington. Every single candidate is for it. Okay, that'll be good for you.
Well, you know how I feel about that. I think that City of Vancouver's done a good job of incentivizing developers and with the tax abatements, and that's working well. I think the more we can do, as much as we can do in a positive way to encourage people to solve the problem, we should do that. I think there's a balance, just we talked about the tenant and the landlord. We may have to make sure that there's a balance so that landlords will have places to rent, and those developers will develop pieces of property. If we make it come out of balance, they will do that kind of development. So I think, again, we need to think it out thoroughly, and we need to make sure that we have a balance that help us solve our problem.
Thank you.
I fully support banning a no-cause eviction and using the just cause ordinance like the one in Seattle. I also support the inclusionary zoning laws. The affordable buildings that are currently being built are going to house families for years. The housing cost and crisis is going to take just that long, or if not longer, to stabilize. Meanwhile, the city's growth is on the rise, and the housing market is short in supply. The better we prepare the immediate future and we set those zoning laws in place, the sooner we'll have affordable homes available for those who really need them.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming back after the break. I appreciate that. On the initial read, the Seattle no-cause evictions, seems well thought out. It not only protects the tenants, but it protects the owner as well. But I would hesitate saying, okay, let's automatically do that here. I would like to hear more about how it's working in Seattle. Is there anything that's not working? And then once we find that out, then can bring it back down here and say, okay, how can we make it better? The second part of it is inclusionary zoning. On the City of Vancouver doc, I think it's page 11. It gets into that a little bit, and requiring that all new multifamily developments have some affordable component is a strong idea, and if it's done well and with good parameters, it can have a very positive effect, I think.
What kind of parameters are you thinking of?
I really don't have those answers. I think that would come from what's working elsewhere, and then when it gets brought down to this area, what can we do better?
Thank you.
I also support just cause ordinances. I live in an apartment that is for low income, or at least it was when I moved in. The rent has skyrocketed. And with the previous owners of this apartment complex, my neighbors had issues with them trying to be evicted for no reason other than a new tenant moving in would be paying more because our lease specifically has rent control. And I think that this is a good way to protect families from being evicted, and then those who are stuck in certain leases who cannot move out, they are protected. And with the inclusionary zones, I support that as well, and I think that will provide options for families that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Thank you.
Yes, yes and yes. Is there a follow-up question? Or?
Yes. So Portland just passed the law where landlords have to pay tenants that they're asking to leave, was it something like $4,500? Right, for no cause, to relocate. Would you also be in favor of something like that?
I actually didn't know they were doing that. It's something to think about, definitely. You have to adjust for, obviously, what their financials are versus we're a smaller city. Mm-hmm. So obviously, if maybe our developers have less units, you may have to reduce it possibly. It's something to think about. I never compare our financial situation to their situation. But definitely something to think about. I would definitely look into it.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm also not in favor of no-cause evictions. It doesn't make sense. But my only concern with that is like with the Seattle ordinance, it's got so many restrictions and so many things that someone has to go through. that I think it's overly complex, because the real issue is, like Nicolette was saying, what stops a landlord from just raising the rent to an exorbitant amount that would pretty much cause an eviction because you can't afford it. So I think you have to sometimes let the business, the market be what it is, and figure out ways to allow people who are of lower income to get into those apartments, like the inclusionary zones, and having subsidies, because otherwise, I mean, there's so many ways you could possibly evict someone, you know, and I just don't think it's social engineering is not the best idea to make that work, so.
Thank you.